July 4th isn't Independence Day. We all know July 4th being Independence Day in America, correct? Wrong. Most historians actually think it's July 2nd or sometime in August. July 2nd is the day that the Second Continental Congress in Philadelphia voted to approve the Resolution of Independence. July 4th is the day it was actually adopted, and the Declaration of Independence wasn't actually done being signed until sometime in August. That's crazy! The more you know. Like for more drag and history videos. Oreo cookies are knockoffs. In 1908, a sandwich cookie called Hydrox, yes, those weird ones next to the Oreos that you think is the off-brand on the shelf? No ma'am. Oreos weren't created until 4 years later in 1912. Oreo is more known because of two things: marketing and Hydrox having a very, very terrible name. They thought it was cute, something meaning sun of some sort, but it actually sounds like some type of chemical you should not be eating. Yikes. Concrete almost didn't exist. After the fall of the Roman Empire, the technology to make concrete was lost for over 1,000 years, until 1414 when they found manuscripts and sparked a rediscovering of it. A lot of people think that the Roman ruins are actually carved stone, but they're not. It's a mixture of volcanic ash, lime, and seawater that they compact together in stone forms and they put on top of each other like blocks, and has lasted a lot longer than the modern form of concrete that we know today. That's crazy. Abraham Lincoln was a wrestler. Before he became president, Abraham Lincoln was a wrestler. And in the almost 300 fights he was in, he only lost once. And had a reputation in his county as an elite fighter. Abraham Lincoln also owned his own bar. And it's also widely believed that historians think that Abraham Lincoln was either bisexual or gay. Abraham Lincoln as an individual, historically, is very interesting to look into. The Star-Spangled Banner is British. The American National Anthem, yes, was written by Francis Scott Key about Fort McHenry in 1914, but the music notes and composition are actually an 18th century British drinking song. Did you know there used to be human alarm clocks? Because alarm clocks were not only cheap or reliable, in Britain and Ireland during their Industrial Revolution, there used to be a profession called a knocker-up, where people would go around in the early morning with a baton or anything. This woman even is using a pea shooter to get into high windows, to knock on doors and buildings to wake people up so they can go in the factories and go work. The more you know. Mary did have a little lamb. In 1915, a little girl named Mary Elizabeth Sawyer, who I believe was 9 or 10, her and her dad were actually doing farm chores on their farm, and they found a sick, newborn, abandoned sheep. Mary was actually able to nurse the sheep back to health, and because of that, it was very attached to her. Yes, and it did follow her to school one day, where Mary hid it under her desk with a blanket. During the day, the teacher asked Mary to recite something in front of the class or do something on the board. The sheep then leapt out from its hiding spot. The teacher was not having it. She said, "No, girl, you guys to put that outside." So, sheep outside, Mary then went to go take it back home during lunch. Literally. Google it if you don't believe me. Did you know cats were illegal? Pope Gregory IX in the Middle Ages condemned black cats because he thought they were to be associated with Satanism and the incarnation of the devil, which he basically issued a death warrant for all black cats, period. Which a lot of other historians believe that this also either helped and or accelerated the Black Plague in the 1300s because of what Pope Gregory IX did. The more you know. History mysteries you didn't know about. In Nampa, Idaho in 1889, 320 feet in the ground was found a handcrafted human figurine, which makes the time period it was created in way before humans even went to this part of the world. And we still don't know where it came from. In 1990, scientists using sonar found two gigantic pyramids 6,000 feet in the ocean. From what they can tell, they are made of some sort of glass and are bigger than the pyramids in Egypt. And they still don't know what it is. Dinosaurs aren't extinct. About 66 million years ago, dinosaurs went extinct, right? Wrong. The dinosaurs that didn't die actually evolved into birds. Another animal from prehistory is actually the alligators and/or crocodiles. They didn't look, if you look back in fossil records, they didn't look much different than they do now. America was never a Christian country. Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin were deists. Yes, George Washington was technically Episcopalian, but he was not a strong practicer. He didn't even ask for a pastor on his deathbed. And John Adams, who was a Unitarian, commented that America, in no sense, in any shape, way, or form, is founded on the Christian religion at all. So we go with that. Napoleon wasn't short. The famous French conqueror was measured at 5'2", but he was measured in French inches, which are a tad longer than English inches, which actually makes him 5'7", which was taller than the average man's height in his era. The Iron Maiden wasn't real. The Iron Maiden was never used as a torture device in the Middle Ages. This myth only came about during the 17 and 1800s when they were motivated to believe and look at people past in history that they were more brutal than they were of that time. Don't get me wrong, they did some crazy stuff in the Middle Ages, but not this. And it's super easy for this myth to be perpetuated because it's real easy to brutalize somebody who hasn't been alive in 500 years. Did you know there was a molasses flood? January 15th, 1919, in Boston, Massachusetts, a tank that held over 2.5 million gallons of crude molasses exploded. A 15-foot wave of molasses going 35 miles an hour flooded the town. It ripped buildings from foundations, destroyed homes and vehicles, and drowned horses. It even killed 21 people and injured 150 others. It took up to 2 weeks for them to clean all of the molasses up, and for decades after, people could say on very hot days in Boston that you could still smell molasses. Now, I don't know if that's still true, perhaps, but I don't know. I've never been there. Cowboys didn't wear cowboy hats. Cowboys are mostly depicted with these big Stetson hats, but they actually didn't wear those at all in the Wild West. Actual popular hat of choice in the 19th century for cowboys was actually something called the pork pie hat. There wasn't 13 colonies. Technically, there was only 12, because before the American Revolution, Delaware was actually part of Philadelphia until June of 1776. And there was 2 British Loyalist colonies in Florida that didn't take part in the Revolution. America's still inherently racist though. Pilgrims did not wear buckles. They did not wear those. Even though we depict, for some reason, that pilgrims wore buckles on their hats, their shoe, everywhere. They did not, okay? They did not do that. They wore their cavalier hats like everybody else and just went on with their day. Which, you know, we ain't gonna get into because they're problematic. Yikes.